Hello and welcome to the Second Wind Academy podcast with me, your host, Ryan Gonsalves. Each week, I invite a sporting guest to share with us their perspective on career transition. If there's one thing we know for certain, is elite athletes at some time are going to have to change their career. This week's guest is Georgia Takarangi, a professional netball player in New Zealand who, recognising that post-sport she's got so much more life to give, has begun her sports psychology path. Join me as we discover a little bit more about Georgia and how she's thinking about her life after sport. Georgia, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on here.
Thank you for having me.
As you know, I'm really looking forward to this session. We've been trying multiple times over the past month, but the beautiful thing is you are a wonderfully busy individual, and it's great that we've been able to find the time for us to sit together now and go through some of your story, where you've been, where you are, and what's coming next. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah, I'm excited for this chat.
Yeah.
Long time coming.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Well, listen, there's going to be a few people listening to this who aren't going to know who you are. Can you just give me that rundown? Give us that rundown about who you are and what you're up to.
Yeah, sure. So kia ora, ko Georgia Takarangi toko ingoa. I'm a New Zealand Māori from Aotearoa, New Zealand. I play professional netball for the Waikato Bay Plenty Magic, and I have played for the New Zealand Silver Ferns before. I'm not currently involved in that, but always hoping to get back in the fold there. Outside of that, I'm a sports coordinator for the University of Waikato in Hamilton. I'm a WellFit coordinator, so we probably will touch on that later, but I'm studying to be a clinical psychologist, so sports science and psychology is kind of like my niche, and that's where WellFit fits in. And I'm a wife and a dog mom and obviously a daughter and a sister and all those good things. Yeah, that's pretty much me.
Love that, Georgia. Thanks for that introduction. I love the dog mum part. That one is a new one for me.
A new one.
Yeah, it is, but I like it. But now we're on there, and there are going to be people wondering, well, okay, who's the dog? What breed of dog do you have?
Yes. Okay, so I've got two dogs. I've got a 2-year-old. Well, they're both rescue dogs, so we don't know 100% what they are, but I've got a 2-year-old bull mastiff cross with a pit bull, so he's a big 40 kg boy. He's actually in the room now, so we might hear some barking if someone walks up the stairs or something. And then I've got a 8-month-old puppy. He is a Belgian Malinois and Staffy cross, so he's not as big. Belgian Malinois are kind of those army dogs that you see like hanging on people's arms, you know?
Yes, okay.
Yeah, he's got a lot of energy. They both got a lot of energy. We actually got the second one. We got a dog for our dog because our big boy, he has a lot of energy, so he needs a friend to be out with him during the day.
Love that. Thanks. Do you know, it's funny you mentioned because they're rescue dogs, you don't know their heritage. And I know you opened up as, talking about Maori. And, the other day I was having a conversation and we were playing a random game. And we were just trying to understand our diversity. I did my DNA test. And,
yeah, I want to do one of those.
Oh, highly recommend it because it's just fantastic for conversation. And so I've got 11 different, tribes, you could say, where I come from. My blood was 11 different places around the world, from Western Africa, Europe, Southern America, Caribbean, England. Well, was it English? Yeah, or maybe Scottish. All of these different places, which were for me quite random. So it was for you then, forgetting the dogs, but for a moment, but talking about yourself and your heritage.
Yes.
You say Maori. Talk to me about that a bit.
Yeah, so Maori people are the indigenous people of New Zealand. We were colonised in the 1800s by Captain Cook. So obviously I have very fair skin, but Maori people have darker skin. In New Zealand, there's no full Maori people left, just from colonization, and that's probably a whole nother chat that we could get into. But yeah, I identify as Māori just because obviously we're a minority here now, and I think I don't know off the top of my head, but definitely under 20% of the population identify as Māori. So yeah, very strong Māori woman. I've got a tribal tattoo on my arm, which is called a tāmoko, and it tells this, usually tāmoko tell about your whakapapa, which is kind of like your heritage, the story of who you are and where you've come from. And yeah, so I guess just trying to identify as Māori because we are minority. So I don't need to identify as Pākehā, which is European, because my skin is white. So it kind of goes without saying.
Yeah, yeah, wonderful. I love that. You know, you can tell, you know, just through the conversations we've had and everything, you know, this really is about the story, and understanding that background for me is always important. But, you know, it's kind of vital just to sort of know who the person is and how that has helped to shape you as an individual. And I think the story you've had so far is, you know, it's kind of like the underdog story in some respects, but I think it is quite fascinating. And so thanks for that little bit. And, you know, leading on from that, I'd love to then sort of kick in to understand a bit more about you in terms of, you know, what your relationship with sport was like as you grew up. Was you spoke about being a professional netball player. Was it always netball for you?
No, so well, I've got an older brother, and so he's 2 years older than me, and I have all boy cousins on both sides of my family. So we spent a lot of time outside playing all different types of sports, and also made up sports that we would make up with different balls of different sorts. So yeah, I've always really been an active person, and both my parents are very active. My mum was a PT when I was growing up. My dad's always been like a runner, so yeah, he played cricket and rugby, and my mum played netball, I think. But so I'm 6 foot, which is actually short, well, not short, but short for my position in netball.
Okay.
And so, but I was this height when I was 13, so I played kind of all of the tall sports. So I played netball and basketball and volleyball when I was at school. I think that playing a lot of different sports actually helped me in netball, because it made me realize that's the sport that I really love, but also helped like with my coordination, because I feel like if you just specialize too early, it's can go downhill, you know, like you just become a netballer and that's it. So yeah, playing different sports definitely helped. I went to a school that wasn't very strong in netball, so I feel like they didn't kind of I guess force me into that, whereas a lot of girls now will go to a school specifically that's good at netball, and then they play that from a really young age, and by the time they get to my age they kind of resent the sport. So grateful for my mixed sport upbringing.
Yeah. And so when did, you know, when did netball then become serious for you? When did you start to realize you were good at this sport if it wasn't something that you participated at least to a top level at school?
Well, I mean, I was in the top team at school, and I was the captain, I think, in my last year. It was a while ago now, so that's why I say I think. I always really enjoyed it, and I always tried to make representative teams, but I just never was quite good enough. I think because I had my fingers in a lot of pies. Like I was playing a lot of different sports, doing a lot of extracurricular activities. So netball was always my main sport, and that's the one I prioritized. If there was another training for another sport at the same time, I would go to netball training. So it's always been the one that I love the most. When I finished school, I prioritized study, and so I only played netball because that was the only thing I had time for. It wasn't until I probably, well, I kept trying to make rep teams, but didn't actually make any rep teams until I was 24 and I moved cities. And
24.
yeah,
Wow.
so quite
What,
old for breaking
what,
it in the representative team.
yes, it is, and that's at a rep level. So,
Mm,
for many people, when I ask that question, the responses are usually when I was about 14, 15, I made rep teams and I started progressing. I had this challenge between school and the amount of
mm,
training I was doing. that doesn't sound like it was the case for you.
No, definitely not. And I think it made it easier for me to keep trying to get into these rep teams because I was only playing it because I liked it. I wasn't playing it because my identity was that I was a netballer and that I was a representative netballer, or that was going to be my key to being successful. So I think that that's kind of one of the things that I try and portray when I talk about my journey is that it's a superpower to enjoy your sport because it makes it easy to go through all of the hard times, Even now, it's still hard even when you get to play your sport professionally, but the playing is the fun part, so that's what gets you through all the trainings.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great, just approach to sport. You're doing it for the fun, which
Mm,
essentially is what it is all about. So at that time, so whilst you were, in your teens, mid to late teens,
mm.
did you dream? Was your idea to become a rep or professional netball player? Was that something that you aspired to?
Definitely not. Like I would say that even now, now that I can call myself a silver fern, which is the national New Zealand netball team, I never had the goal to become a silver fern, and that's not taking anything from the people that are silver ferns. Like obviously, I'm still very proud of that achievement, um, but it was never. I was never a little girl who thought, oh, that's what I want to do one day. And I think some of it was that I didn't think I was good enough because there were so many teams that I didn't make. But some of it was just that wasn't my why, I think. So my why was more the enjoyment, and that's kind of what's helped me, I think, to
Mm.
rather than also thinking too far ahead. Even now, because I'm 29, I've been playing professional netball for 5 or 6 years now. Every year I play as if it's my last year because like I might want to have kids next year, or I might get a season-ending injury, and then it's not that likely that I'll come back in my early 30s because I'll probably I've got other stuff going on. So I try and approach every year and make the most of every year because you just never know what's going to happen. And the enjoyment factor really helps with that because it doesn't put any pressure on me to play well, or even though it is my last year, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you like you say, you play as if it is your last, which means make the most of it. And
Yeah.
for you, that centered around enjoyment. You spoke there on trials.
Mm.
I'm guessing from that mid-teen age, you must have. How many trials do you think you went to?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, probably like in terms, so I would have gone to every age group trial, which would have been once a year, from the age of maybe 14. And then I also, so there's just your normal reps, and you would rep your region. So back then I was representing North Harbour, which is a small part of Auckland in New Zealand, and then you'd also have Māori representatives. So I would trial for both your like all over representatives and then also Māori, and there'd be an Easter tournament where all Māori people would come together in different age groups and opens and play, and wouldn't get into either of those teams. And so twice a year I would trial and not get into the teams. And each age group usually had an A team and a B team. So there's two teams I'm not getting into. Um,
Why did you keep going?
I mean, I guess I hope that one day I would be good enough. Yeah, I mean, I've always known that I have a talent for netball and I can read the game well. I'd had no coaching really at this time, apart from my school coach, which normally is like a mum or a teacher because I wasn't at a strong school. So, um, yeah, I mean, I just like playing. So I was just wanting to be in more teams.
Yeah, I guess that is simple. You put it that way. I just want to keep playing. But there's
Yeah,
that rejection that you get twice a year.
yeah.
At the time, to what extent did you sense, did you have a sense of rejection?
Oh, 100%. And I think like, especially being like a young teenage girl, um, you you're already worried that you're going to be, rejected by your peers for every little
Mm.
thing that you do. So it definitely made me a lot more resilient, I would say.
Yeah, I can
And
imagine
also,
if you were the 6 foot 13, 14-year-old girl walking into trials, I suspect everyone would have been looking at you thinking, oh, well, she must be in.
yeah. And then when I don't get in, it's like, oh, I must not be very good because I'm really tall, you know? Yeah, so yeah, it was hard. And also I would turn up and I wouldn't really have any friends. It's quite, netball's quite cliquey because it's a all girls sport. Well, men are starting to play it now, but back then it was an all girls sport. And so you turn up and everyone's already friends because they've been in the rep teams before. So I'm just like over sitting by myself, waiting for my name to get called, you know. Um,
So so I'm there then. Let's fast forward. What what changed for you when you were then in your early 20s? What changed at that event for you to then get through?
um, I think some of it was maturity in that I am the kind of player who I think has gotten better with age because I can read the game well. The way that I play is quite deceptive, and it's more about the person who's passing. I'm a defender, so it's more about the person who's passing rather than the person I'm marking. So I think in terms of my gameplay, I've gotten better with age. I actually owe a lot of it to a coach who, because I moved cities, I feel like sometimes when you're in one city and you're in the system for so long and people just see you as that player who they first saw, who was not good enough, and they don't actually see your growth. I was in a really good club team in that I had a lot of growth from the coach of that club team, and it was actually her that referred me to the coach when I moved cities. So I did have like some connections, and I was playing high level club. I just wasn't making rep teams, so I was getting coaching in in the club team, and she pretty much that my coach at that time pretty much taught me. She taught me from the point of view of a shooter, so what she wouldn't want someone to do to her. So I play a little bit differently to other defenders because I was taught by a shooter rather than being taught by a defender. Um,
You were taught the tricks of if you do this, this will annoy a shooter
yeah,
the most.
100%. Yeah.
Hello.
So then, yeah, she pretty much referred me to this other coach who, um, said pretty much like, there's this 24-year-old. She's never been in any rep teams, but she's got a lot of potential. She's very coachable. She's a very hard worker. Give her a shot. And that's actually my coach of my professional netball team now. So she kind of moved up with me. So that was my first representative team, was the team below the Magic. So it's an amateur team that doesn't get paid, but it kind of has the same sort of season to prepare you. It's like a development team to prepare you for what it's like to be in the Magic in terms of lots of training and having access to resources and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, it's really, really impressive that What do you think you did that helped your coach there? Sorry, I forgot her name. What was her name? The coach.
The one in Auckland,
Yes. Who?
her name's Ree Picker.
Okay, so for Ree to say that about you, what do you think you were doing or demonstrated for her to be able to say that and recommend you so strongly?
Um, I'm definitely like someone who does a lot of extras and one percenters, and I think once I'm in the team, I make it really hard for coaches to not play me because I'm just like, okay, what else can I do though? Okay, but what about now? What other skills do you want me to get better at? How can I get on the court? I just want to be on the court. And so eventually they put me on the court, and then, it's kind of builds from there. So I think, because I'm like a forever student, my
Yeah.
husband would say, like, I study a lot. I like studying. I feel like that translates into netball. Like, I'm quite coachable because I like applying things that I've learned.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think hard work and coachability, if that's a word. I just made a word up, probably.
It's a great word. We're going to use that. In fact, we'll probably put that as something like the headline.
Oh, yeah,
Coachability.
nice.
Georgia is coachability. But to that point though, being highly coachable and that desire to learn, this love of learning, and you've touched on there. Probably for me, one of the essences of being an elite athlete is this love of learning, this desire to continually improve and get better and find new ways of doing that. And your dedication to learning it sounds like it transcends the netball court, but also comes into your life as well. So when you think of that, you know, from a learning perspective, I'm now keen to understand what were you studying. So when you left school at 18, what did you dream of doing at that point?
I actually wanted to be a doctor from the time that I was 5, like a medical doctor. I actually wanted to be a brain surgeon.
Okay.
Um, and
Nice and
so,
specific
yeah,
5-year-old.
yeah, I know. I'm a very specific person. And so, yeah, that was all the subjects and stuff I took at school were kind of, aimed at that. And then I got in, in New Zealand at med school, you do like a year of pre-med. And then if you get good grades in that, so you first have to get into uni with, get into pre-med with your grades. And then if you get good grades in that, then you can get into med school. So went into pre-med and did a year of that and absolutely hated it. It was really competitive and I had my notes shredded. So I went to the toilet, had left my notes before my first test on my like study desk or whatever. Came back and my notes were gone and I found them in the shredder later. And I just really struggled with I'm always someone who like tries to make new friends and gets along with a lot of people, but it wasn't ever like, oh, what have you got for lunch? It would be like, what did you get on this test? So I just didn't really like the competitive nature, and I feel like if that was what I was meant to do, then I wouldn't care about that. I would just enjoy it. So I decided at the end of that to cross-credit my papers over into sports science. So I went into sports science, and as part of sports science, you have to do some psychology papers, which were my absolute favorites. I love psychology so much, but I also really like sports science. So I didn't really know when I was doing it what I wanted to do. I obviously love sport. I love learning. And so I did a conjoint degree, which is kind of like a double degree. So a Bachelor of Science in Sports Science and a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology. And that was only because I wanted to do more psych papers rather than just doing a
Right.
Bachelor of Science, double majoring in those two.
Yeah. What is it then? So, little pause. What is it then about psychology that fascinates you so much?
Oh, I just think the brain is just so interesting. From the biology of it to the way we think and how that impacts things, and how, like even stories of how people have like used placebo to cure cancer. Like that just, it baffles me that your brain can, physiologically change your body. It's just so powerful, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just
Yeah,
so, I just
it
love
is.
it, as you can tell.
Yes, that's it. But it is fascinating, and they're talking about the strength of the mind, indeed the human body to do some quite amazing things. And so for you, you had this love of learning, going down doing this conjoint, which sounds more like a triple or indeed a double degree,
Yeah.
but going down, so doing this double degree
Yeah.
when you shifted, so that was for you a shift in goals, a shift in desire of what you were going to be from a brain surgeon for all this time
Yeah.
to something else. How, if you can remember at the time, how did you describe this something else? What did you then want to achieve to become?
I don't think I had like a career in mind in terms of, well, eventually I decided I wanted to become a mental skills coach while I was doing this double degree. But at the beginning, I just knew that I was passionate about all of these things and I loved every paper. So I was trying to actually use the degree to figure out what I was most passionate about. Um, and it didn't take me long to figure out that I really like psychology, which is why I thought that mental skills would be a good way to go. When I was in my early 20s, I wasn't thinking about things like how that would fit in with my lifestyle, or, like traveling with teams probably wouldn't be like feasible if I had a family, or all of those kind of things. So that's how I kind of started. And then when I did move down and made the rep team, I did my master's in sports psychology. Because I wanted to use that to become a mental skills coach. And since then, I've kind of decided I don't actually want to do anything in sport at all, and I want to be a clinical psychologist. My kind of journey's gone to be make me realize the older that I've gotten that I want to help people not just with their mental performance, but also just your average person, because mental health is such a talked about subject these days, and something that so many people need help with. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, wonderful. I love the way that's changed. These shows are all about transition, that generally that
Mm,
career transition, and so here, listening to you and that love of learning and how your learning journey has taken you through these different paths. I literally do fascinated by that shift for you from outside of sport, mental skills, so being really very much inside sport to now
mm,
stepping out and I guess tackling the broader societal problem
mm,
around mental health and, through being
yeah.
a clinical psychologist. I tell you one thing that did resonate with me there really well is you're doing this, you're doing the degree, the double degree, not knowing what it is that you wanted to do, but use the degree. You were just following things that you enjoyed. You were
Mm,
studying things that you enjoyed and realized you wanted to add this extra piece because you loved psychology papers, fascinated by the mind.
yeah.
Yeah. Do you look back and think, for me, that resonates so well with this love of playing netball? You found this love of study, learning, and eventually
Mm.
that led to something greater. Have you ever considered the parallels between the two?
Um, I mean, maybe you're just being a clinical psychologist to me right now. It's a really good way to think about it. I mean, when you actually say it like that, I've done some values work before, and the two values that always come out on top are love and growth. So I feel like that kind of explains it in terms of I have to be loving what I'm doing, and potentially the values work I've done has been in the last few years. So I was following these values without even knowing that I was, I guess. Yeah, I have to be loving what I'm doing, and I have to be trying to get better every day.
Yeah.
Otherwise, essentially, I'm not filling my cup. So love for me is also, being around my family and friends and stuff like that, but also loving what I'm doing and doing things that I'm passionate about. And I think the older that I've gotten, the more that's evolved to helping people. So that's why I think clinical psychology has been the way that I've um, kind of steered my career.
Yeah, that you can express yourself in that way.
Mm.
And I think it's, like I say, great that you've done that. Definitely not been a clinical psychologist, just really curious with you and where you are. But then talking about what you love in doing and I guess following that passion, coming back onto that netball
Mm.
story really is, you know, getting my head around the fact that it's 24 years old where suddenly you're truly hitting that elite level and
Mm.
making those next squads. And what was that experience for you like? Can you just summarize what happened and how quickly things started moving for you?
Yeah, definitely. So I made the NNL team, which is the team below the Magic, when I was 24. Um, then at that time, I was still doing my masters. So the way that, because it's amateur, we have trainings outside of work hours so that you're able to study or work or do whatever. So I would work. Sorry. I would get up. We'd go to the gym at like 5 o'clock in the morning. Then I would go to work because I also had to pay for rent and stuff like that. So I was doing sports coordination back then too. So that was 28 hours a week. Well, still is 28 hours a week. After work, then I would go to netball training. When I got home from netball training, I would do my master's thesis. So I'd be up at about 4:30, and I wouldn't get to sleep until about 11:30, which was for like that was for my first year and a half of in and out. And so I think everything after that just felt easy, to be honest. Once in my first year, I was just a training partner at the beginning because I was a nobody essentially. So I played well at trials, but she kind of, had selected other people. And I remember I was sitting in a circle with the team, and everyone had to write their goals down for the season. And everyone else said things like, I want to be in the starting seven. I want to get this many goals in, or blah blah blah. Mine was, I just want to make it hard for you to drop me after the 6 weeks that I'm a training partner. I'm going to do everything in my power to stay in this
Yeah.
team. And my coach is someone who I didn't know at the time, but loves stuff like that, loves challenges and, people being bold in what they want.
I
And
mean,
so
I've
she,
just got to jump in because that is. That's fascinating. You wrote that down as your goal, was making it hard to be,
Yeah,
essentially hard to be dropped from, this is the national represent. You want it to make it hard to be dropped.
yeah.
Why wasn't it? I suppose I'm asking this in the wrong way, but I'm just thinking, why wasn't it to achieve something? Why wasn't it, as in, you wrote it in a negative way? Why not be such a positive thing, like be in the seven, or block someone?
Well, because I wasn't in the team, so the only thing I could aspire to be was in the team, and then once I got there, that would be my next goal. I'm quite like process orientated, so for me, like if I said something like I want to be in the starting seven, that's like 5 steps removed kind of thing, you know. So I still needed to prove myself to even get in the team, because I was just a training partner, let alone actually get on the court and do anything netball related.
Best response ever. That is fantastic. Yeah, and you just there. You said it's breaking it down, it's chunking it down into something that is
Yeah,
more tangible, and that was it. That for you was, well, don't get dropped.
yeah, yeah. Essentially, that's my goal. um, yeah. So then I eventually there was an injury, and then I got pulled into the team, and then I probably didn't play the first maybe 3 or 4 games because there's 16 in the squad and only 10 get selected each week for the team. And then eventually I did get selected, and then kind of made my way into more game time. Then the following year I was co-captain with another girl, and by that stage I was 25 or 26 and kind of felt like the next person in age after me was probably 21 or 20, so I felt like quite a lot older than the other girls. I'd had 2 years of learning, but I just felt like I kind of was then teaching. So I sent out my netball CV, which was like a video footage and like a document, but obviously the document wasn't very big because I'd only been in one rep team, of all the things that I had done, and sent them out to every franchise team, which is the professional team, because I kind of was at the age where I was like, cool, I've played rep netball, but if no franchise team wants me, then I'll probably just stop playing rep netball, because it's a big commitment, and a lot to sacrifice for. And also I felt like I was taking up someone's spot who could potentially make an ANZ franchise team, and if I wasn't going to, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to, reach for the stars. Eventually,
Yeah.
the Magic were like, "Oh, you should come in for a meeting with us," and then that's how I got my first contract for Magic, which was in 2020. Was my first year for Magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For obvious, challenging in many respects. 2020, year of COVID kicking in. I guess I want to say COVID aside, but what changed for you at that moment? How did your aspirations shift?
Yeah, I think I finally realized that this was something that I could do for a job. Um, Obviously, the first year you don't get paid, like netball doesn't get paid amazingly. Otherwise, I wouldn't still be a sports coordinator as well. But yeah, like it was a decent amount of money, and so I was kind of living the dream. Even like I hadn't experienced netball, franchise netball outside of COVID, so it felt like everything was so new. And I remember the first half of the season, all of the games were at a centralized location because of COVID. And it was a small, very small stadium, only allowed 50 people to come and watch or something like that. And then halfway through the season, it opened up, and we were able to have a home game in Hamilton with 5,000 people there. And that happened to be my first game that I played and started.
Wow.
And I remember standing on the court feeling like I was going to vomit because I was so nervous. Like all my family there and everything. And yeah, it's just still surreal thinking about that, because I never thought I would ever play one game for the Magic. And last year played my 50th. So it's just, yeah,
Yeah.
surreal.
That is, yeah, and that's a great way of talking about it. That progression that you made, from your that professional career, the sporting career, that profession, you didn't stop. You continued to keep moving up. And so, what was next for you then? You didn't get dropped. It was
No.
play, debut, co-cap, start moving forward. So what was next for you?
Yeah, so it all kind of happened in quick succession. my first rep team was in 2018. Then I was captain of that team in 2019. Then I debuted for the professional team in 2020, and then I debuted for the national team in 2021. So not a typical trajectory at all. Very lucky for my journey to be that way, because there are some girls who debut for a professional team when they're 18 and then never play for the Silver Ferns, let alone play for them the next year. So very lucky. It was COVID again that I can thank, because there were a few girls that ended up in a lockdown in Auckland, and I wasn't in Auckland, and I was already in the mix in the development squad. So got the call up that way. So I mean,
So how old were you when you made your debut for New Zealand?
2020. I think I was just about to turn 26, because it was in October, and my birthday's in October. So, yeah, or just about to turn 27. Yeah.
Either way, it's probably later than most.
Yeah, definitely.
In terms of
Definitely.
in terms of making that debut, how do you? Perhaps a random question. I'm not sure if you've asked others, but how do you think it's different making your debut at that age versus, I guess, in your early 20s, like many might do?
Yeah. I think I have a bit more perspective than younger people. I think it's a blessing and a curse, because it's a blessing. I was talking to someone about this the other day, actually. It's a blessing and it's a blessing having so much that I have away from netball, because it means that if something doesn't go right, I'm still going home to my husband. I still have to go to work the next day. I'm still just your average person. But but it makes it harder every year to make the decision to keep playing, because I have so much going on that I'm putting on hold, I think. And I think that helped me with my debut, because I was kind of like, well, in my debut, actually, because there was another COVID outbreak, there was only 50 people allowed in the stadium, and my husband flew down from Hamilton to Christchurch, and he did a haka, which is a traditional war dance, a Māori war dance. He did it by himself in the stadium after I debuted, and so it was really special that he could be there. But at the end of the day, he had said to me, because the New Zealand colour is black, the Silver Fern dress is black, he said, just seeing your name on the dress and you standing there singing the national anthem will be worth my flight down. So it kind of like took all pressure away. He said that this could be the only ever time that you sing the national anthem for New Zealand, so I have to be there. Not that he doesn't think that I'm good enough to be there some more, but he obviously knows the age that I am, and
Absolutely. Well,
you never know what else is going to happen.
Yeah, well, that's it. Cherish
exactly.
the moments, and like you say, perhaps being that bit older from a sporting perspective gave you a different perspective, a perhaps broader perspective in terms of how special that moment was. So, I'm interested then for you, now as a professional netball player. Well, actually, before I ask that, could you talk to me about how it works professionally? Is it a 52-week season? Is it always on? How does it work in New Zealand?
Yeah. So our season itself goes for 15 weeks plus 2 weeks for finals. So we play, there are 6 teams. We play every team 3 times. And then there's 2 weeks of finals. So the season itself is 17 weeks long. We usually have a 12-week preseason before that. So the actual time that we're together is about 7 or 8 months, depending on the year. And so the rest of that time, 4 months or whatever, is off season. But if you're involved in the national teams, then that is the time that you're with them, because that's when they have test matches against other countries and things like that. Our season does vary depending on when there's World Cup and Commonwealth Games, because we have to adjust it for the national team, but that's kind of how it works. And then you can either be paid 12 monthly or 7 monthly, depending on what works best for you.
Okay, all right. And so for you, you talk about yourself, your life today. You still have study, because you only ever study, and you work and you play.
Yeah.
How does that work? How do you manage your time?
That's a great question. So I have a very neurodiverse Google Calendar that is color coordinated. and pretty much if I didn't have that, I think I would crumble and burn. Yeah, it's a lot. I do a lot, but I mean, I choose to do it all, so I try not to ever complain about it. And in the season, I just work and play netball, and out of season, I work and study. So yeah, the hard thing with me at the moment is that I only have 2 more papers to do before I can actually do placements for clinical psychology, and they're both during the first half of the year. So this I can't really do it at the moment. So I'm planning on doing that next season if I play, and trying to work out something with work. But yeah, it's a continual, yearly thing that I discuss with my husband, how we're going to make all of this work.
Yeah.
Is this still something that fits with our life and our future?
Yeah. What do you find? What do you struggle with the most?
Honestly, spending time with my husband is something that I don't do enough of. And especially, I know that we don't have kids, but we do have 2 big rescue dogs that require a lot of training. And we've had one that's just had surgery 12 weeks ago. The other one's a puppy. So yeah, I do. He does a lot. He does a lot for me to make it so that I can do what I do. And it's hard when I get home after like a full day of training, and then I'm so tired, and he gets the worst of me. So yeah, I think that's the thing I struggle with the most. And also, he's very ready to have kids, which is why we have 2 dogs. So yeah, he's definitely he's my rock, and that's the thing I struggle with the most. It's not the time management or being busy or anything like that. It's making sure that I have enough time for us as a family.
Yeah, yeah, and it is a struggle. Balancing all of those things in a career. We talk often about our career, probably more on a one-dimensional, paid job type view, but in many respects, that true definition of a career does encompass your life, personal life. It includes work, sport, and charitable activity as well. So all of those things together, all of that encompass your career, and trying to get the balance of those right. Well, it shifts kind of as we've discussed now, as you move through ages, what's most important to you. So
Yeah.
yeah, I get it. I truly, in fact, I recognize that struggle a little bit in myself as well. So yeah, it is a struggle. And so when you think then of, we've perhaps spoken or touched on clinical psychology as part of that future for you. When you think of how that's going to happen for you, what comes to mind? Do you think about that transition out of playing elite netball and how long does it take? What does it look like? What comes first?
Yeah.
What goes through your mind?
Yeah, honestly, I think about this a lot, like, because we also want to have kids, and we want to travel, and we want me to focus on my career, and there's so many things to fit in. And that's why we only look 1 year ahead at the moment, just because otherwise it's so overwhelming. My husband's actually a youth worker, so our dream one day is to own a clinic that has one side of it that is not for profit, helping youth, and then the other side of it is clinical psychology. And ideally, we would have like a room with our dogs in there for dog therapy, and like a gym, because both of us love working out, and that's a really important part of your holistic health. And that's the dream one day, so that we could work together and spend time together and build something like beautiful together. So that is the end goal. It's just how we're going to get there is the question. And I guess that's what we think about when we make decisions, is this kind of helping us get to that place that we want to get to. Yeah, it is hard though, because, when I finish playing netball, I still have 2 years to finish my clinical psych degree. And I'm kind of like, how am I going to fit that in when we want, 2 kids, or if we're lucky enough that we can have kids. So it's, yeah, it's hard. That's a hard thing about doing it later, because I'm 29 now, 30 this year. So all those things come into every contract I get from Magic. There's so many things that go into whether I sign or not.
Yes, yeah, there is. There's some, and thanks for breaking that down, because just hearing that, hearing the thought process that you have to go through every year, I guess,
Mm,
to sign that contract is, it's actually it's complex, and
mm,
I think for certainly for women listening, they'll resonate with all of those aspects, because
mm,
for me, things about timing for families, and as a male, it's it's different, right?
mm.
Between my ability to still do, the beep test and get to a
Yeah,
high number. Well, unless I'm sleep deprived, perhaps I can go with
yeah.
that. My wife is probably going to listen to this, go, "Oh my God, they're not." Forget it. Anyway, they're not comparable. But no, listen. I say thanks for sharing that, because I'm interested. Then when you think about where you are today and sort of the path that you're heading down, do you think back, and what is it that you would say, well, okay, happy where I am now, but I wish I'd have done this differently to set me up for success better?
I struggle so much with these questions because I just feel like I'm where I'm meant to be, where I'm meant to be, and I don't like having regrets. Um, yeah, I honestly don't have an answer for you. I honestly think that I love my life and all the choices that I've made to bring me here, I appreciate. And I've definitely made some mistakes, but I feel like that's kind of what, um, who I am because of those mistakes, if that makes sense.
Yes, yeah, it does. It does make sense. Absolutely. I must admit, I've been reading a book called The Power of Regret, and
Mm,
every now and again, I listen to it again, because he describes it beautifully around, well, we have regrets, and it's okay to regret. The key thing is to learn from it and
mm,
make sure it doesn't negatively define you.
yeah,
Those are the bits where, as you've described it, it means you can be happy with where you are,
mm,
delighted with where you are in life, recognizing, yeah, things that I've learned, but all of those things got me to where I am today,
yeah,
of enjoying that for what it is.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I think there are some lessons that have taken me longer to learn than I would like. Probably, that's probably the only thing I would say. I'm very much a people pleaser, so I think it's taken me too long to say no to people. There you go. That's my one regret.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that, as a people pleaser. It's something I've just started to, I'm going to say, here in these conversations that I
Yeah.
have with athletes is, and for those that I'm coaching is, because we ask, what else can I do? What do I need in order to be
Mm,
fit? What do I need to do this X? It kind of puts in as, well, you need to ask someone for that direction, and to
yeah.
actually set the bar, and right now I'm going to surpass that bar. So we have this people pleasing, maybe might be
Yeah.
the patch, but that it's kind of in us somewhere.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And also, like, you're better at taking criticism than your average person because you take criticism from coaches, in a training, I probably would get like 50 negative things and two good things.
Yeah.
So, like, you're just kind of used to being told bad stuff and taking it on board and then making yourself better.
Hmm.
So, it's a good thing because, but then you kind of get used to that and you don't want to be in the habit of, I guess, like, not putting up boundaries. I think, yeah, that's something I've definitely gotten better at since I've been older is putting boundaries up. And like, obviously I don't have heaps of time. So, um, yeah, that's saying yes to everything is my downfall normally because then I end up burning out. So being able to say no
Yeah.
and turn the athlete off and be like, you need to look after yourself now.
Yes, very, very true. So when you think then for, someone who's coming up trying to follow in your footsteps, and and you think about helping them with that career transition, what sort
Mm.
of guidance would you give to them? What's the one or two things you'd say, hey, well, make sure this happens, or you're looking out for that?
Um, I mean, obviously planning for I think maybe the one thing that you can take from my journey, if you haven't already got something outside of sport, is to plan as if it's your last year every year. Because then, if it is, you have not necessarily a backup plan, but other things that you have that are important to you. So I think even if I didn't have a career, I do have a husband and a really good support system, and my family and my dogs, and those things I think are more important necessarily than having a career. Because I mean, if I was to retire now from netball and I didn't have my degrees behind me, like, I've still got so much life left. So it's not like I can't just go to uni and do that. It's not the end of the world. And I think when people talk about transition, they're thinking about career transition and not actually about the support that you need around you when you have that identity change from being an athlete to being a person. So maybe figuring out who that person is before the change happens, so that it's not such a big grieving point in your life. I know that I probably will grieve even though I have other stuff going on and I know who I am, because obviously, like, it's a big part of my life. But yeah, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense, Georgia. And thanks for, well, one, thinking out loud, but two, sharing it, because, I think for many listening, they can take a lot from this whole conversation, but also from some of those specific points that you've just given. And look, listen, Georgia, I think, I want to say thank you for spending your time with me today on this conversation. And, there are going to be others who are going to want to follow your story, follow you as a player and where you go. What's the best way for that to happen? Where can they find you?
Probably Instagram. I'm just Georgia Takarangi is my handle, and I've just started to try and grow my personal brand a little bit more, because I'm thinking about, if this is my last year, I need to make the most of being a netball player. So that's where I'm posting a lot more of my life in netball, but also my life outside of netball, and trying to kind of grow my wellness expert hat, I guess, in that space as well. So yeah.
Wonderful. Listen, Georgia, thanks again. I'm glad we've been able to chat and record our conversation.
Yes.
Absolutely brilliant having you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. That was really fun.